다시 이별이 와도 큰 아픔
第3章，我费了好长时间才弄清楚他是从哪里来的。
현수님 웬일이래요? 아니 반가워요. 오랜만에. 난 중국말 듣고 있었어요.
小王子向我提出了很多问题，
뭔 말인지 모르겠죠?
可是问题他好像压根没有听见似的。我只能从他偶然间所说的事情中一点一滴拼凑出他的身世来历。例如，当他第一次瞅见我的飞机时，我就不画出我的飞机了，因为这种图画对我来说太复杂。
麻烦你了。
他问我道：“这是个啥玩意儿？”这不是玩意儿，它能飞，这是飞机，是我的飞机。我当时很骄傲地告诉他我能飞，于是他惊奇地说：“
너무 살기 힘드네요. 힘들어요. 많은 시간이 흘러 我姓金，我的名字线索。哇， 정말 잘하시네.
道，怎么，你是从天上掉下来的？”“是的。”我谦逊地答道。“啊，这真滑稽！”小王子发出一连串清脆悦耳的笑声，这使我很不高兴。我希望他能够以严肃的态度对待我的不幸。然后他又说道：“那么，你也是从天上来的？你住在哪一个星球？”这句话犹如一道亮光，让我仿佛发现了他突然出现的秘密。于是我赶紧问他：“你是从另一个星球来的吗？”可是他没有回答我的问题，只是盯着我的飞机，轻轻地摇着头。“从你乘坐的这玩意儿看来，你不可能来自太远的地方。”接着他就长时间地陷入沉思之中，然后从口袋里
뭐라고 말씀하셨더라? 엄마, 왜요? 산다는 건 어떤 그런 거. 왜 이래? 마fan이라. 원래 6岁的时候，在一本描写原始森林的书中，看到了一幅很精彩的图画。 小王子的心。좋다. 힘들다. 차차 게스트하우스. 제가 지금 저기 살고 있어요. 좋아요. 재미없죠?
In a book about the jungle called Once, when I was 6, I saw a magnificent picture in a book about the jungle called True Stories. It showed a boa constrictor swallowing a wild beast. Here is a copy of the picture. In the book it said, boa constrictors swallow their prey whole without chewing. Afterward, they are no longer able to move, and they sleep during the 6 months of their digestion.
明天我请你晚饭好不好？明天我请你
In those
晚饭。
days, I thought a lot about jungle
발코니
adventures,
ASMR 좀
and
드시면
eventually
힘드시네.
managed to make my first drawing using a colored pencil.
차차 게스트하우스
My
장스터
drawing number
한
1
달요.
looked like this.
明
I showed
天
the
我
grown-ups
请
my
你
masterpiece,
晚饭。
and I asked them if my drawing
晚饭
scared
무슨
them.
뜻이지?
They
ASMR.
answered, "Why be scared of a hat?" My drawing was not a picture of a hat. It was a picture of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. Then I drew the inside of the boa constrictor so the grown-ups could understand.
제 전화번호
They
아세요? 카톡이나.
always need explanations. My drawing number 2 looked like this.
만약을 위해서 알려드릴까?
The
블로그라든지.
grown-ups advised me to put away my drawings of boa constrictors, outside or inside, and apply myself instead to geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar. That is why I abandoned, at the age of 6, a magnificent career as an artist. I had been discouraged by the failure of my drawing number 1 and of my drawing number 2. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is exhausting for children to have to provide explanations over and over again. So then I had to choose another career, and I learned to pilot airplanes. I have flown almost everywhere in the world. As a matter of fact, geography has been a big help to me. I could tell China from Arizona at first glance, which is very useful if you get lost during the night. So I have had, in the course of my life, lots of encounters with lots of serious people. I have spent lots of time with grown-ups. I have seen them at close range, which hasn't much improved my opinion of them. Whenever I encountered a grown-up who seemed to me at all enlightened, I would experiment on him with my drawing number 1, which I have always kept.
좋다.
I wanted to see if he
친구랑 같이
really
있으니까.
understood anything, but he would always answer, "That's a hat." Then I wouldn't talk about boa constrictors or jungles or stars. I would put myself on his level and talk about bridge and golf and politics and neckties. And my grown-up was glad to know such a reasonable person. So I lived all alone, without anyone I could really talk to, until I had to make a crash
네,
landing
잘
in the
구해줘요.
Sahara Desert 6 years ago. Something in my plane's engine had broken, and since I had neither a mechanic nor passengers in the plane with me, I was preparing to
제주도 한번
undertake the
오세요.
difficult repair job
같이 일
by
한번 하게.
myself.
일을 같이 해봐야
It was a matter of
그 사람을
life or
알지.
death.
그쵸?
I had only enough drinking water for 8 days. The first night, then, I went to sleep on the sand 1,000 miles from any inhabited country. I was more isolated than a man shipwrecked on a raft in the middle of the ocean. So you can imagine my surprise when I was awakened at daybreak by a funny little voice saying,
Please, draw me a sheep.
"What?"
Draw me a sheep.
I leapt up as if I had been struck by lightning. I rubbed my eyes hard. I stared. And I saw an extraordinary little fellow staring back at me, very serious. Here
화이님
is the
방송
best portrait I
시작했다잉.
managed to make of him later on. But of course, my drawing is much less attractive than my model. This is not my fault. My career as a painter was discouraged at the age of 6 by the grown-ups. And I had never learned to draw anything except boa constrictors, outside and
신발 갈아
inside.
신고 있어요.
So I stared wide-eyed at this apparition. Don't forget that I was 1,000 miles from any inhabited territory. Yet this little fellow seemed to be neither lost, nor dying of exhaustion, hunger, or thirst, nor did he seem scared to death. There was nothing in his appearance that suggested a child lost in the middle of the desert, 1,000 miles from any inhabited territory. When I finally managed to speak, I asked him, but very slowly and very seriously,
Please, draw me a sheep.
in the face of an overpowering spirit, you don't dare disobey. Absurd as it seemed, 1,000 miles from all inhabited regions and in danger of death, I took a scrap of paper and a pen out of my pocket. But then I remembered that I had mostly studied
Sure.
geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar, and I told the little fellow, rather crossly, that I didn't know how to draw.
아니요,
He replied,
안 오세요.
That doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep.
출발. 몇 시냐?
since I had never drawn a sheep, I
Yeah,
made
that's-
him one of the only 2 drawings I knew how to make, the one of the boa constrictor from outside. And I was astounded to hear the little fellow answer,
No, that'd be dangerous, and an elephant would get in the way. Where I live, everything is very small. I need a sheep. Draw me a sheep.
So then I made a drawing. He looked at it carefully and then said,
No, this one is already quite sick. Make another.
I made another drawing. My friend gave me a kind, indulgent smile.
You can see for yourself. That's not a sheep. It's a ram. It has horns.
So I made my third drawing, but it was rejected, like the others.
This one's too old. I want a sheep that will live a long time.
So then, impatiently, since I was in a hurry to start work on my engine, I scribbled this drawing. And added, "This is just the crate. The sheep you want is inside." But I was amazed to see my young critic's face light up.
That's just the kind that I live. Everything is very small.
There's sure to be enough. I've given you a very small sheep. He bent over the coin.
Not so small as all that. Look, he's gone to sleep.
And that's how I made the acquaintance of the little prince. It took me a long time to understand where he came from. The little prince, who asked me so many questions, never seemed to hear the ones I asked him. It was things he said quite at random that, bit by bit, explained everything. For instance, when he first caught sight of my airplane, I won't draw my airplane, that would be much too complicated for me. He asked,
What's that thing over there?
"It's not a thing, it flies. It's an airplane. My airplane." And I was proud to tell him I could fly. Then he exclaimed,
What? You fell out of the sky?
"Yes," I said modestly.
Oh, that's funny.
And the little prince broke into a lovely peal of laughter, which annoyed me a good deal. I liked my misfortunes to be taken seriously. Then he added,
So, you fell out of the sky too. What planet are you from?
That was when I had the first clue to the mystery of his presence, and I questioned him sharply. "Do you come from another planet?" But he made no answer. He shook his head a little, still staring at my airplane.
Of course, that couldn't have brought you from very far.
And he fell into a reverie that lasted a long while. Then, taking my sheep out of his pocket, he plunged into contemplation of his treasure. You can imagine how intrigued I was by this hint about other planets. I tried to learn more. "Where do you come from, little fellow? Where is this where I live of yours? Where will you be taking my sheep?" After a thoughtful silence, he answered,
The good thing about the crate you've given me is that he can use it for a house after dark.
"Of course. And if you're good, I'll give you a rope to tie him up during the day, and a stake to tie him to." This proposition seemed to shock the little prince.
Tie him up? What a funny idea.
"But if you don't tie him up, he'll wander off somewhere and get lost." My friend burst out laughing again.
Where could he go?
"Anywhere, straight ahead." Then the little prince remarked quite seriously,
Even if he did. Everything's so small where I live.
and he added, perhaps a little sadly,
Straight ahead. You can't go very far.
That was how I had learned a second very important thing, which was that the planet he came from was hardly bigger than a house. That couldn't surprise me much. I knew very well that except for the huge planets like Earth, Jupiter, Mars, given names, there are hundreds of others that are sometimes so small that it's very difficult to see them through a telescope. When an astronomer discovers one of them, he gives it a number instead of a name. For instance, he would call it Asteroid 325. I have serious reasons to believe that the planet the little prince came from is asteroid B612. This asteroid has been sighted only once by telescope, in 1909 by a Turkish astronomer, who had then made a formal demonstration of his discovery at an international astronomical congress. But no one had believed him on account of the way he was dressed. Grown-ups are like that. Fortunately, for the reputation of asteroid B612, a Turkish dictator ordered the astronomer repeated his demonstration in 1920, wearing a very elegant suit. And this time, everyone believed him. If I've told you the details about asteroid B612, and if I've given you its number, it's on account of the grown-ups. Grown-ups like numbers. When you tell them about a new friend, they never ask questions about what really matters. They never ask, what does his voice sound like? What games does he like best? Does he collect butterflies? They ask, how old is he? How many brothers does he have? How much does he weigh? How much money does his father make? Only then do they think they know him. If you tell grown-ups, I saw a beautiful red brick house with geraniums at the windows and doves on the roof, they won't be able to imagine such a house. You have to tell them, I saw a house worth 100,000 francs. Then they exclaim, what a pretty house. So if you tell them, the proof of the little prince's existence is that he was delightful, that he laughed, and that he wanted a sheep. When someone wants a sheep, that proves he exists. They shrug their shoulders and treat you like a child. But if you tell them, the planet he came from is asteroid B612, then they'll be convinced, and they won't bother you with their questions. That's the way they are. You must not hold it against them. Children should be very understanding of grown-ups. But of course, those of us who understand life couldn't care less about numbers. I should have liked to begin this story like a fairy tale. I should have liked to say, once upon a time, there was a little prince who lived on a planet hardly any bigger than he was, and who needed a friend. For those who understand life, that would sound much truer. The fact is, I don't want my book to be taken lightly. Telling these memories is so painful for me. It's already been 6 years since my friend went away, taking his sheep with him. If I try to describe him here, it's so I won't forget him. It's sad to forget a friend. Not everyone has had a friend, and I might become like the grown-ups, who are no longer interested in anything but numbers, which is still another reason why I've bought a box of paints and some pencils. It's hard to go back to drawing at my age, when you've never made any attempts since the one of a boa from inside and the one of a boa from outside at the age of 6. I'll certainly try to make my portraits as true to life as possible, but I'm not entirely sure of succeeding. One drawing works, the next no longer bears any resemblance, and I'm a little off on his height too. In this one, the little prince is too tall, and here he's too short, and I'm uncertain. I rope in one direction and another as best I can. In the end, I'm sure to get certain more important details all wrong. But here, you'll have to forgive me. But I, unfortunately, cannot see a sheep through the sides of a crate. I may be a little like the grown-ups. I must have grown old. Every day, I'd learn something about the little prince's planet, about his departure, about his journey. It would come quite gradually in the course of his remarks. This was how I learned, on the 3rd day, about the drama of the baobabs. This time, too, I had the sheep to thank, for suddenly the little prince asked me a question, as if overcome by a grave doubt.
Isn't it true that sheep eat bushes?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, I'm glad.
I didn't understand why it was so important that sheep should eat bushes, but the little prince added,
And therefore they eat baobabs too?
I pointed out to the little prince that baobabs are not bushes, but trees as tall as churches, and that even if he took a whole herd of elephants back to his planet, that herd couldn't finish off a single baobab. The idea of a herd of elephants made the little prince laugh.
We'd have to pile them on top of one another.
But he observed perceptively.
Before they grow big, baobabs start out by being little.
True enough. But why do you want your sheep to eat little baobabs? He answered,
Oh, come on, you know.
as if we were talking about this problem all by myself. And in fact, on the little prince's planet there were, as on all planets, good plants and bad plants. The good plants come from good seeds, and the bad plants from bad seeds. but the seeds are invisible. Then it stretches and begins to sprout, quite timidly at first, a charming, harmless little twig reaching toward the sun. If it's a radish seed or a rosebush seed, you can let it sprout all it likes. But if it's the seed of a bad plant, pull the plant up right away as soon as you can recognize it. As it happens, there were terrible seeds on the Little Prince's planet, baobab seeds. The planet's soil's infested with them. Now, if you tend to a baobab too late, you can never get rid of it again. It overgrows the whole planet. Its roots pierce right through. And if the planet is too small, and if there are too many baobabs, they make it burst into pieces.
It's a question of discipline.
The Little Prince told me later on.
When you've finished washing and dressing each morning, you must tend your planet. You must be sure you pull up the baobabs regularly, as soon as you can tell them apart from the rose bushes, which they closely resemble when they are very young. It is very tedious work, but very easy.
And one day he advised me to do my best to make a beautiful drawing for the edification of the children where I live. If they travel someday, he told me.
It could be useful to them. Sometimes there's no harm in postponing your work until later. But with baobabs, it's always a catastrophe. I knew one planet that was inhabited by a lazy man. He had neglected 3 bushes.
So, following the Little Prince's instructions, I have drawn that planet. I don't much like assuming the tone of a moralist, but the danger of baobabs is so little recognized, and the risks run by anyone who might get lost on an asteroid are so considerable, that for once, I am making an exception to my habitual reserve. I say it's to warn my friends of a danger of which they, like myself, have long been unaware that I worked so hard on this drawing. The lesson I'm teaching is worth the trouble. You may be asking, why are there no other drawings in this book as big as the drawing of the baobabs? There's a simple answer. I tried, but I couldn't manage it. When I drew the baobabs, I was inspired by a sense of urgency. Oh, Little Prince. Gradually, this was how I came to understand your sad little life. For a long time, your only entertainment was the pleasure of sunsets. I learned this new detail on the morning of the 4th day, when you told me, wait.
What for?
For the sun to set. At first, you seemed quite surprised, and then you laughed. If you could fly to France in 1 minute, you could watch the sunset. Unfortunately, France is much too far. But on your tiny planet, all you had to do was move your chair a few feet, and you could watch the twilight whenever you wanted to.
One day, I saw the sun set 44 times. You know, when you're feeling very sad, sunsets are wonderful.
On the day of the 44 times, were you feeling very sad? But the Little Prince didn't answer. On the 5th day, thanks again to the sheep, another secret of the Little Prince's life was revealed to me. I pondered in silence.
If a sheep eats bushes, does it eat flowers too?
A sheep eats whatever it finds.
Even flowers that have thorns?
Yes, even flowers that have thorns.
Then what good are thorns?
I didn't know. At that moment, I was very busy trying to unscrew a bolt that had got jammed in my engine. I was quite worried, for my plane crash was beginning to seem extremely serious, and the lack of drinking water made me fear the worst.
What good are thorns?
The Little Prince never let go of a question once he had asked it. I was annoyed by my jammed bolt, and I answered without thinking. Thorns are no good for anything. They're just the flower's way of being mean.
Oh,
But after a silence, he lashed out at me with a sort of bitterness.
I don't believe you. Flowers are weak. They're naive. They reassure themselves whatever way they can. They believe their thorns make them frightening.
I made no answer. At that moment, I was thinking, if this... Again, the little prince disturbed my reflection.
Then you think flowers...
No, not at all. I don't think anything. I just said whatever came into my head. I'm busy here with something serious. He stared at me, astounded.
Something serious?
He saw me holding my hammer, my fingers black with grease. Then that made me a little ashamed, but he added mercilessly.
You confuse everything. You got it all mixed up.
He was really very annoyed. He tossed his golden curls in the wind.
I know a planet inhabited by a red-faced gentleman. He's never smelled a flower. He's never looked at a star. He's never loved anyone. He's never done anything except add up numbers. And all day long he says over and over, just like you, I'm a serious man, I'm a serious man. And that puffs him up with pride. But he's not a man at all. He's a mushroom.
He's a what?
A mushroom.
The little prince was now quite pale with rage.
For millions of years, flowers have been producing thorns. For millions of years, sheep have been eating them all the same. And it's not serious? Trying to understand why flowers go to such trouble? To produce thorns that are good for nothing? It's not important, the war between the sheep and the flowers? It's no more serious and more important than the numbers that fat red gentleman is adding up? Suppose I